Going to go ahead and get started this morning. It seems like we get later and later getting started every week, and that's okay. It's good to be in God's house.
Amen.
It's good to be able to laugh and fellowship and be a part of each other's lives. And I think that's what God intended. That's why He said over in Hebrews, forsake not the assembling together of yourselves. We need each other. I was really encouraged, those of you that were here on Wednesday night. Danielle wants to make sure that Hayden gets some church.
Yeah.
And so they drive all the way down on Wednesday nights just to make sure he's in church because he can't come on the weekends. And so Danielle, if you're listening, hats off to you for making that commitment.
Thank you.
And for those of you who come in, you know, I know you've had long days. I know you've had strenuous work schedules and everything. And for those of you who come in on Wednesday nights, I know it's not just, oh, well, let's just walk over to church real quick. I know it's a planning. I know it's a scheduling. I know it's letting something else go to be here. And so don't think I take it for granted. I appreciate it. And I think it helps. I don't know. I thought this, I don't usually think it very often, but I thought this past Wednesday night was pretty good.
Yes.
God spoke to me through it, and so I praise God for that. Today, I've had a thought running through my mind, partly because of my own personal life, and partly because I see so much of it in our world today. The topic for today's message is, does what I do even matter? Does what I do even matter? If I said to you, we're going to talk about Shiphrah and Puah this morning, how many of you would know who I was talking about? That's what I thought. None of you. I don't know about out there. Maybe a couple out there would know. But those were the midwives that denied Pharaoh's order to crucify or to kill all of the newborn babies in Israel. Those were two of the midwives. Does what I do even matter? I know you as well as I feel like sometimes, I know in my life, most of what I do is behind the scenes. Most of the praying that I do, most of the studying that I do, most of the sacrifice, even with the ministry, with the ARC, with the daycare. All of what I do for the daycare is mostly behind the scenes, unless I show up to repair something or go get groceries for it or haul in groceries at night or fix something or whatever. Most all of that is behind the scenes. Most all of the stuff for the pastorate, except for a few hours of preaching and a few hours of witnessing or house calls or whatever, is behind the scenes. And it's really discouraging when somebody says to me, well, what do you do? Or what have you done all day? Or what are you going to do on such and such or whatever? And I know sometimes with you guys, you wonder sometimes, and maybe I'm just taking it for granted, but I would suppose that some of you at some point in your life have asked yourself, does what I do even matter? I told Kevin the other day, it was really nice. I was sitting at my desk and I can see the steam from the power plant from my office desk. And I looked out and I kept seeing the steam rolling, and I sent him a text. And I said, it sure is good to see the steam rolling there. It makes me know that they made the right choice in putting you in as plant manager. Because for so long it wasn't making money, and for so long it wasn't. I mean, you go against all of the stuff and all of the rules and regulations and broke down parts and not having any money and all that kind of, and it's really nice to see, like he said a while ago, we finally made money last week, and to see, but most of what I'm in a position of authority, like several of you are in positions of authority, you get it from both ends. You get it from the top coming down and you get it from the bottom coming up. Like you're like a toilet being flushed and you're like a toilet being backed up. And it's all right there on you all the time. And as a pastor, I told another pastor here in the community with this COVID thing, it doesn't make any difference what we decide, we're going to be wrong. If we decide to close, we're going to be wrong. If we decide to stay open, we're going to be wrong. There have been church splits because of this COVID stuff. There's been, anyway, I won't get into that. But we talked about Shiphrah and Puah, two of the midwives. we talk about the Israelite army fighting the battles and conquering the lands, there wouldn't be any army of the Israelites if it hadn't been for these women. But maybe what they were thinking, is what I'm doing even going to matter? Is what I'm doing even going to count? What difference does it make if I save a child or not? What difference does it make if the Hebrews are just slaves, so what difference does it make? Just because I've got a conviction, what difference? Does what I do even matter? And sometimes in all of our lives, we get to that place in our lives where is what I'm doing even making a difference? With me standing up here and preaching and studying for hours and praying for you night after night after night after night after night after night and morning after morning after morning after morning. And I don't know about you, but I can't watch TV and pray. I can't watch YouTube and pray. When I'm praying, I have to be praying. When I'm studying, I have to be studying. And I know it doesn't look like doing anything. And I know it doesn't feel like doing anything. And I know that it seems like wasting time. All you're ever doing is just sitting there in front of that computer. But what does what I do even matter? When you're doing your paperwork and you're doing your reports and you're teaching those kids who don't want to learn and you're running a power plant that doesn't, everybody in the country wants it shut down and have some big fan up there spinning in the air so we can do something on it. Does what I do even matter? Does it matter if I'm out here chopping ice in the 30 below weather? Does it matter to the grocery stores? Does it matter to the vegans who are raising Cain about cattle production and I'm out here in 30 below trying to keep the cattle production going? Do you like shoes? Then you like leather. Do you like car seats in your car? Then you like leather. It's just, we don't think far enough ahead, and we people behind the scenes wonder sometimes, does what I do even matter? Give you another couple of examples. Look at Exodus chapter 35. If you want to turn some Bible verses this morning, I'm going to give you a whole bunch of examples, but I'm not going to make you turn all of them. In Exodus chapter 35 and verse number 30, if I was to say to you, do y'all remember Bezaleel and Alohab? Anybody? Bezaleel? Nobody? What Aholiab? Anybody? Nobody?
What book of the Bible are we in? Exodus?
We're in Exodus. And Moses said unto the children of Israel, see, the Lord hath called by name Bezaleel, the son of Uriah, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, and hath filled him with the Spirit of God in wisdom and in understanding and in knowledge and in all manner of workmanship to devise curious works, to work in gold and in silver and in brass and in the cutting of stones to set them and in the carving of wood, to make any manner of cunning work. And he hath put in his heart that he may teach both he and Aholiab, the son of that other guy in the tribe of Dan. God called these people, and their talent was craftsmanship. The Old Testament tabernacle had all kinds of inlays in gold and all kinds of fine carvings and all kinds of linings and all this kind of stuff. And nobody remembered who designed it. They just saw the finery of it. We remember Joseph, and we remember Daniel, and we remember Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and we remember Gideon. But what about all of these people who may have wondered themselves, does what I do even matter? Does anybody even care? God cared. God says that He called him by name. God put you where you are for a particular purpose, for such a time as this, He says. And He called you by name. Jumping on over to Psalms. You remember, how about if I tell you about Asaph? Y'all probably just remember that fox that crossed the creek on him, right? But Asaph and the sons of Korah were responsible for, I'm not sure exactly how many psalms it was, but there was a whole bunch of psalms that they were responsible for writing. Some of the two most notable ones that we remember and have written songs about them, the one we sang this morning, As the Deer Panteth After the Water. That comes up in Psalms number 42. As the deer panteth after the water, so my heart longeth after thee. The verse that was in the bulletin this morning, may the Lord cause His face to shine upon you, over in Numbers. And here in Psalms again, it talks about in Psalms 44, O Lord of hosts, cause your face to shine upon us. That song, I think there's a contemporary Christian song, Day Star, Shine Down on Us. That's where, but does anybody remember? Oh, everybody remembers David, the great songster of Israel, the harp-playing songwriter of Israel, but nobody ever remembers Kohath and the sons of Korah. Does what I do even matter? Anybody remember Naaman's wife's maid? She didn't even get a name. But it was because of the little maid that was nameless that Naaman got healed. And he was a great general. Does what I do even matter? She could have kept her mouth shut. She said, I'm a slave. I don't know this jerk anything. I don't need to even tell him about it. But I just said, well, what do you got to lose? Most of us will fit right in this one. How about Balaam's donkey? You don't remember Balaam? Well, what about his donkey? He said, all these years I've served you and never once balked, never once threw you off or nothing else. The donkey chopping sounds like most pulpits today. How about Deborah? Anybody remember Deborah?
Yeah.
Remember Deborah? I figure you women remember Deborah. Yeah, we got a woman in the Bible. But she was one of the female judges of Israel, and did a good job. Y'all remember Matthew, right? Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, all them popular guys. Anybody remember Philip?
Yeah.
Yeah, Philip left the revival meeting and went down to the desert and talked to one Ethiopian. And he baptized that Ethiopian over there in the corner of the desert. And that Ethiopian went back to somewhere over that way, where Queen of Sheba was, and started one of the great revivals, as history tells us. What about, let's go back to the Old Testament for a minute. How about Mahela, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tisra? All those are right on the top of your spiritual list, right? Huh? Not daughters of Saul.
David.
They were daughters of Zelophehad.
I was going to say that.
You were going to say that? Good. But they were the girls that at that time in history
They wanted land.
didn't get an inheritance, and they stood up before Moses and said, what about us?
Word, yeah.
The law says, they started quoting scripture to Moses. God said, you got to give us some land too.
Yeah.
And they did. And because of that, that whole tribe of Manasseh and some of the others got to get an inheritance because those girls stood up. What difference does it make what I do? Does what I do even matter? Sometimes Rose's love language is not acts of service. And so I wonder sometimes, does what I do for you even matter? Does it even count? Sometimes I look at the church. Does it matter how many hours of study goes into this 145-minute lesson? On Wednesday night, does it matter? Does it matter the hours that I spend in prayer? Does it matter the emails that I send? Does it matter the money that I try to raise for this place? Does what I do even matter? I can go get a secular job. I got all kinds of pieces of paper that says I'm smart. Does what I do even matter? People listening by way of internet. I get all kinds of views and not one single comment. Does it even matter? I skipped last week just to see if it would make a difference. Nobody even noticed. Nobody said one word about it.
I did because I couldn't find it.
I figured I'd
But now that goes on my thought too. That's not supposed to be what I'm doing it for. I'm supposed to be doing it to get the gospel out because that's what God has told me to do. He didn't tell me to go get reserves. But it does get real nice when you bake a nice cake and somebody says, oh, that thing was good.
Oh, it's nice when they leave it alone.
On Friday night, Gabby calls. She says, what are you doing for supper? I said, I hadn't planned anything. I said, well, are you coming over? Well, I don't know. Are you going to come to eat supper? If you're going to come to eat supper, I'll cook something. Well, I don't know if I'm coming or not. Okay, fine. So I didn't cook anything.
Oh, first mistake.
So Rose is talking to her on the phone, and the static was getting bad. She says, well, I'm just right here at your driveway, and I ain't cooked a thing. So I go in there and I cook, and they're just all sitting there, and they're just lapping it up. Some of them are wallowing in the barbecue sauce, and some of them are smearing it in their hair, and it was appreciated. It was good. It all disappeared. And you guys, I don't know how many. I don't want to say ladies because most of our guys cook too. But when you cook something, don't you like it when somebody says, man, that was good? Don't you like it when it all disappears?
No.
And you had your piece? It's like Candace brings in eggs to church, Pastor, Gonna bring you some eggs next week. I come in, everybody just grabs the eggs and goes, Pastor gets the shells, you know.
We put in our order. Why is this such a miscommunication?
I'm the pastor, I shouldn't have to order.
Oh my God.
I'm not doing it, Mickey. I'm just playing with you, Candace, you're fine. Oh, man. But there should be certain privileges being pastor.
Oh, 5 dozen next week.
Apparently 27 cartons. No.
I mean, we had cars pulled over out there on the road this morning trying to separate the fight. Gabby was attacking them for taking somebody else's egg. Anyway,
Give her her eggs back. She ordered them.
how about, everybody remembers Jesus, right?
Yeah.
What about the Samaritan woman at the well?
Mm-hmm.
You know, she's the one that was caught in very sin. And Jesus said, yeah, you ain't married. And the guy you're living with now, you're just shacking up with him. You done had 5 husbands. And she could have went and hid under a rock. I mean, the God of this universe had just exposed her sin to her. But what did she do? She girded up her skirt. She took off back to town. And she said, y'all come see a guy who told me everything about my life. Is this not the Christ? And half that town got saved because of her witness. Does what I do even matter? Where'd Johnny go? Does stopping on the side of the road, helping some guy put his load back on his truck even matter? Does me calling in the young girl out there on the highway the other day, the young girl out there walking on the highway, a stupid little nut, walking out there on the highway toward Billings, and she couldn't have been very old. Yeah, toward Billings, sorry. I'm inside. Ain't no sunshine in here. But it's, and I called the police department and I said, you know, because I don't pick up girls on the street. It just way too many things going on. But I called the police department and I said, I don't know if it's out of your jurisdiction or not. I said, but there seems to be a young female wrapped up in a shawl walking down the highway. And just 10 miles down the road, we had one die last year. Or year before last, or however it was. We found that little girl over here in the camper dead. Had been there for 2 years. And they disappeared all that, found Henny buried in the snow. Young girls are disappearing all over the place. And that 13-year-old kid this past week jumped in her mom and dad's truck and took off running away with it. Stupid youngin'. If you listen to me this morning, don't be stupid. Go in your room and hide. Go into the house and hide. Leave a note where you're at. One of my kids ran away one time. I said, don't run away. Just tell me you're tired of me and I'll help you get out. I know how it is to be tired of me. I know how it is to be tired of your parents. I get tired of me sometimes. Don't be stupid. How about the 4 men that carried the crippled man and put him down through the roof? They weren't giving any names. I preached a sermon one time. Gave you some. Yeah, I named them. I remember them.
They have names.
I named them, but God didn't name them. I preached that message in Michigan when I was over there one time. And so yeah, you're right. I did name them. How about the owner of the donkey that Jesus rode in on? Jesus told his disciples, he said, go in town, you're going to find a donkey tied up over there. What's the possibility of that, Lord? Everybody's got donkeys, and usually they keep them tied. So they go in there, and they find this donkey that's tied up. This guy could have come out with his camel stick and beat the manure out of him. But how about the owner of the donkey that Jesus rode in on? Nobody ever mentioned. I've never yet heard a sermon about the owner of the donkey. You know? Does what I do even matter? And I know some of y'all have felt that way this past year.
True. Yeah.
I know some of y'all have felt that way this past year. Well, I want to tell you, it does matter. And I can get a pity party with the best of them. I sometimes wonder if it would even matter if I dropped dead. Would anybody even notice other than having to pay for the funeral and having to get some really strong guys to carry my big fat butt to the graveyard? It would, okay. It mattered by phone. But I told Moses, I said, when I'm dead, I said, just cremate me and spread my ashes on the flower beds here at church. That way nobody has to work and I'll always haunt them. How about the little boy with the lunch? He wasn't given a name. Oh, everybody remembers feeding the 5,000. But what about the little boy who had to go hungry? Or thought he was going to have to go hungry? I mean, he probably got his share. He probably got more in the end than he would have got to start with. Because I know how chinchy mamas are. There's a story of a missionary who had been over in some foreign land, probably Hardin, Montana, for years and years and years and years and years and years and years. 26 years come this year. And he was going to go home. And he got on this boat. And on this same boat, unbeknown to him, was this famous rock star. And they were going home, and they got closer and closer to the American port. And the missionary could see this big crowd gathered over there on the bank. And he could see big signs. Welcome home, yay, 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 yay. And then he noticed the names on those signs. It wasn't his. They were celebrating the homecoming of this rock star who had been on tour. And he got to the bank. And all these people were there to greet the rock star, for playing his music and singing his songs. And the old missionary and his wife were standing there, and nobody even came to pick up their luggage. And so they're going off the ramp of the boat, and they're hauling their own suitcases off to the landing. The old man just kind of thought, Lord, I spent all these years, missed my family, missed watching my grandbabies grow up, missed my homeboys. Nobody even here. Did what I do even matter? And he said it was that still small voice. He said, son, but you're not home yet. One day, maybe it won't matter here much to people. But maybe one day, when we get up there, we'll get to hear. What was that song you girls sang for me a few weeks ago? Look around. For great is your reward. Thank you for giving to the Lord. D.L. Moody, 5th grade education, shoe salesman. He mentioned D.L. Moody, and most Bible people, they know the Moody Institute, Moody Bible Press, and all kinds of stuff has to do with religious stuff, but he started out as a shoe salesman. And his Sunday school teacher named Edward Kimball. See, I mentioned D.L. Moody, everybody in here, or most everybody in here, knew something about him. If I'd have said Edward Kimball, y'all have thought Kimball piano maybe? No. But he was D.L. Moody's Sunday school teacher. Anybody remember Horatio Spafford or Spafford? Did they mean anything to anybody? Look in your hymn book, you'll find a song. It's called It Is Well With My Soul. Lost his kids. There's 2 or 3 different stories of how that song came about, and I won't give you. One of the stories is that he crossed his face over the ocean. Another story is the captain of the boat wrote it when they hit the storm. But either way, he's credited with writing It Is Well With My Soul. One of the most well-known, encouraging songs. But Billy Sunday. Mentioned Billy Sunday. He's a baseball player. Alcoholic bar dropper. Turned preacher. He was sitting on the sidewalk one day, and a guy named Harry Monroe invited him to a tent meeting. A revival meeting. What do you call it? The street rescue mission. He went, wasn't impressed, went back a few more times. They gave an invitation, he was just kind of standing there looking lost. And a lady named Mrs. Clark went down, come and talk to him about Jesus. I don't know Miss Clark, do you? Not as far as I know, nobody remembers Miss Clark. If I'd have to look it up on Google. Google knows everything. Google knows everybody and everything. I looked up me on Google the other day. Come to find out I was a baseball player.
That's right. That's right.
Does what I do even matter? We lost a tremendous preacher, pastor, missionary last couple of weeks, Howard Wynn. I wonder when he stopped that little 14-year-old kid from going looking in his suitcase and getting a cigarette at the youth camp to put on that little girl's wasp sting. Wonder if he thought this ain't gonna matter. Wonder if he thought that guy, 60 years old, standing in a pulpit, was going to remember what that youth pastor did for him those many years ago. Wonder if Howard thought, does what I'm doing even matter? Do these kids even care? And at the time I didn't. The only reason I went to youth camp was for the girls, because we always went swimming. Does what I do even matter? Howard heard a message. I sat where they sat. And he surrendered his life to go to the Philippine Islands and serve. When I was away from God, away from church, living my own life, doing my own thing, an old drinking buddy, I've told you guys the story, but they don't know it. Walking across the Food Lion parking lot in Lewisburg, North Carolina. And I saw him. And I said, Gene, his name was Gene Bolt. I said, Gene, how's it going, buddy? I hadn't seen him in a year or two. And he said, I've given my life to Jesus, and I'm living for him. You done what to? He told me again. I wonder if he knew back then that him just telling somebody that Jesus saved him would be the catalyst that put Pastor Randy in a pulpit. I wonder, after I got saved, I was floundering, didn't know what God wanted out of my life, knew he wanted something. I figured my life didn't have to change that much. I could pastor one of the little churches there in Franklin County, North Carolina. There were 3 or 4 of them that had opening. I wonder if Randy Bain knew that year when I walked up to him and said, Randy, you ever get to Montana? He said, I'm going the first time this year. I said, I want to go with you. He said, I've been praying for 6 months that God would send somebody with me. I came out here and I was mad at God because God didn't show me nothing. I figured I'm going to come to Montana, God's going to lay out his will for my life. He's going to show me where I'm going to live, what I'm going to do, how I'm going to do it, and everything else. And not one thing. And I told God, sitting on the bank of a trout pond in Lewistown, Montana, God, I could have been this miserable in Carolina. Why did you drag me all the way out here? And me and Randy got in the car and we started riding. And he didn't say a word and I didn't say a word. I wonder if he knew just sitting there shutting up and driving would make a difference in my life. I wonder if the churches, maybe some of them are listening today, that have sent me a card or sent me an email or sent a Christmas present for a kid or sent a support check, or I got a precious lady not long ago. I told them that my iPad was getting old and it wasn't working real good. And she sent me a $100 check. She said, put this toward a new iPad. And then she sent me another note later. You don't have to hang on to it for an iPad. You can use it for whatever you need it for. But I wonder when they write out that little check. I got a dear friend of mine who lost his wife this past year. I got a check from him at Christmas time. I don't know if he can even see how to write anymore. Got another old lady in Michigan. Her and her husband sat back on that back row. One Sunday morning, the girls were up here singing Angels Among Us. And they have prayed for me And every once in a while she'll have a yard sale and she'll send me the tithe off the yard sale. I wonder if they know. Does what I do even matter? I want you to know, if you've ever helped me, sent me an email, left a comment on YouTube, it matters. It's what's kept me here. Does what I do even matter? I know you wives feel that way sometimes. I know you husbands feel that way sometimes. I know you employees feel that way sometimes. I know you employers feel that way sometimes. See, nobody ever looks at the employers. They have to pay liability taxes, insurance taxes, medical taxes, all this kind of stuff. And all you get, you just gripe because your paycheck ain't big enough. You think about what all the business owners have to spend to keep you employed. Does it matter what you do? You might be the catalyst for the next miracle. In your dollars. Somebody come up to me every once in a while and hand me a few dollars. Or I get a check in the mail. Does it matter? Yes, it matters. It may not mean anything to you. It may not be that much to you, but it matters. Maybe it's an invitation. Go by the grocery store. Hey, would you like to come to our church? We have a pretty good song service. Preacher lets out sometime. Maybe it's a song. Maybe the writer of a song jotted down some words on a napkin somewhere in a restaurant. And it's transformed people's lives. Maybe it's just a friendly face. Maybe you're the only friendly face they've seen all day. I'm not a very good social person. My facial expression says I'm mad about half the time. Rose goes out and works her butt off all day. And she comes on in the afternoons and I'm so preoccupied with my own stuff, usually I don't even acknowledge that she's there, to my detriment. And all she wants is just a friendly face. That's why I bought her that bulldog. I feed her, give her shots, take care of her. She wags her tail at Rose, and Rose is the queen. How about a little phone call? I told you last week, call Julie, call Pat, call Grandpa. Just a phone call, just a couple of seconds out of your day. Does what I do even matter? I guarantee you make them old people's day. The ones that are missing this morning, give them a call. They say it's the thought that counts, so I thought about calling Johnny last week. Send him a little bag lunch. You kids, your mom gets up, she puts your medicines out there, she puts your lunches out there, she gets your school clothes ready, she washes your dirty drawers, she picks up after you. She sometimes seems, does it even matter what I do? It matters. I don't know if they're listening or if they will listen, but I get a call about once every 3 or 4 months from an old man. His name is Kay Hill. He was a song leader. 40 years, I guess. And I didn't think he even knew I was alive. And I've got messages saved on my answering machine. I've saved 4. Because I don't save messages very often. But I've got 3 or 4 messages saved from Kay. He says, love you, buddy. We pray for you. Me and the boys pray for you every morning before we go to work. Does what I do even matter? I want you to know this morning, yes, it matters. Any of you that pray for me out there, any of you that send gifts for this ministry, yes, it matters. All of you just sitting here this morning, what you do does matter. You brought those eggs in here this morning. You drove in for 45 minutes away. And we pick at you about not bringing my eggs. Yes, it matters, honey. You brought in them 2 bags of clothes for that little girl. Yes, it matters. See, you think nobody notices. You think you're just a spot on the wall that nobody sees, but you're not. You matter. I know you got ice to chop. I know you got calves to feed. I know you got mud to trudge through. I know you got them 3 little girls to get ready, and I know I had 4 of them. And sometimes you'd rather have a whole pasture full of cows than 3 kids, I know. It matters. I know you come in and, you know, and of course y'all are a little bit different. You stop the whole freaking service to say hello to June, so. But it matters. Phoebe's downstairs right now taking care of babies. Tell her you appreciate it. Because what you do does matter. Rose says, you don't ever tell me I look good. I said, baby, you look good all the time. I ain't gonna stay with no ugly woman. And I don't say things that I should. I should tell her she looks good every day. You know that old saying, I told you you look good once. If you change my mind, I'll let you know. If you get ugly on me, I'll tell you. Maybe you're kind of slipping. You look like your face caught on fire and put it out with an axe here now. Each clothes get a little tight there, maybe. You know. But what you do does matter. I help a lot of people. And sometimes I wonder, it's like before services today. I've helped that man 3 or 4 times. And what I tried to help him with today wasn't good enough. Does what I do even matter? I was told when I was adopted by the Crow tribe, I thought it was a great honor, you know. I was told later it was just so we can have somebody else to borrow money from. I didn't realize how true that was going to be. Think back in your life. Somebody who did something that wasn't, it's not going to be written down in the portals of history, but it made your day. I guarantee you, every single one of you sitting here this morning has made a difference in somebody's life. Come here, Ty, we'll put you on camera. Ty is my 15-year-old grandson. I used to hold him in my hand because he was a preemie. And his mom said, I don't know what to do with this thing, and so I've taken care of him. And I don't care where he's at or what he's doing, he's going to come up and give his papa a hug. Mm-hmm. He's finally taller than I am because he ain't got no shoes on. I got on boots. He's almost as good a shot as I am now. Sometimes he's a little better.
My thumb's good.
Kiss off. But yeah, he'll roll his eyes at me when I start telling him about working so hard. Or some of the things I had to go through. I've heard it before, Papa. And you're going to hear it again. And hopefully one day it'll sink in. Teach them little kids over there. Last week I gave them a break. Can we do that again? Does what I do even matter? I know you feel that way sometimes. Does my employer even appreciate what I do? Yeah. Does my husband or wife appreciate what I do? Yeah. Do your kids appreciate what they do? They may not show it, but they do. So when you get to the place in your life that you say, does what I do even matter? I want to let you know it does. Those of you listening by way of internet, those of you listening by phone, those of you sitting here this morning, I know it's hard. I know the days get long. And I know Satan likes to bombard us with, does what I do even matter? Because sometimes I think I'm his #1 target. Because I have a pretty low self-esteem of my abilities. In some areas. Some areas I am good. I mean, I'll just flat out tell you I am good in some areas. But in the pastorate, in being a husband, being a father, sometimes I think, does what I do even matter? And so I know if I feel that way, then some of y'all probably do too. And I know God laid this message on my heart for some reason. Because all those names that I read you, y'all didn't know them. I didn't know most of them. But God knew every single one of them. And me and you, neither one may not get recognized. I might not get a single comment or an email, and you may not ever get a pat on the back or a thank you or anything else. But I want you to know this morning that your pastor appreciates you. I had a young lady not too long ago that was listening to the videos, and she was going through some really hard times. And she was standing in the parking lot of the hospital, and she had just gone through some real trying times. She was kind of irritated with God. She said, I don't even have a pastor. And then she stopped a minute and she says, oh yes, I do. He's over there in Montana, I do have. And maybe I don't have a big congregation here, but there's a few more out there that consider me their pastor. And that's pretty cool. I'll give you the address if you need to come. I hope you've been encouraged today that what you do does matter. Especially you moms of young ones. Because I know that is...
It's a rock in the park.
Yeah, it's a rock in the park. You're exactly right.
I'm joking.
I know. And even more than me knowing is God knows. If God keeps up with all the hairs, and God keeps up with every time a sparrow dies, and God keeps up with how many animals need to go in the boat, and God keeps up with these people's names that we forgot, then I'm sure He cares about your day. Lord, we thank you for caring. We thank you for your love. God, help us to realize that what we do does matter. Most of all, God, help us to realize that what you did matters. You gave your life for us, and that matters. Help us to be so very thankful. In Jesus' name I pray.